Hello valued viewers, I hope you're all doing very well. Loads of you have requested this latest request, and that is from the excellent Warzone online magazine, a document, Super Hornet armed with SM-6 missiles spotted over California. It's an interesting piece about how the massive, super long range, surface-to-air, surface-to-surface SM-6 naval missile is being tested in air launch format from Super Hornet, and you guys have asked us to simulate a use case with it. Now we've actually done this before a couple of times. Here we used F-16s to launch air-launched SM-6 against ground targets to try and hit Moscow in this case at over 200 miles. We've also used it in air-to-air format. Here, could a US air-launched SM-6 missile snipe Chinese AWACS at over 200 miles? So today I figured we would try a third use case, and that is in all-out air-to-air combat. Could the SM-6 be used as a super long-range air-to-air missile? There's absolutely no reason why it shouldn't be. It's obviously primarily a naval missile to be launched by US ships in the surface-to-air and surface-to-surface format, but in the air-launched format it could be used for air-to-air or air-to-ground. So I've set up what I think will be the best empirical test for this missile in an air-to-air format. And that is, I'm taking a squadron of US 4th gen aircraft, FA-18 Super Hornets, versus the equivalent Chinese naval squadron, J-15Bs. The setout, as you can see, is super simple. 250 miles between starting factions. Each squadron has 4 flights of 4, so total 16 aircraft per side. Each faction has AWACS here and here, which is going to be used to support the missiles, because all missiles today will be fired beyond the radar range of the firing aircraft themselves. One difference to normal, I've set the AWACSs to invisible, so they can't be shot at, because I don't want to pollute the test today. I just want pure fighter versus fighter. I've had to be a bit creative, so the Super Hornets here, and I apologise for the old VSN model that I'm using. It is looking a bit tired, and I do have a better model, but it takes time to get it working, and I just don't have time at the moment. I've had to decide how many SM-6s could possibly be carried on the Super Hornet, and I don't know how many, so I've assumed 4. I may be wrong, maybe it's 2, but we'll go with 4 today. So each Super Hornet is set to veteran skill level, and everyone will be AI veteran skill level today, no human pilots. 4 SM-6, 2 AMRAAMs, the D3 variant with a range of about 110 miles, and 2 close range AIM-9X max range about 20 miles. The SM-6 we've essentially had to create from scratch. In the surface-to-air format, they're going to have a range of about 150 miles. So we've made a prediction that the max range in an air-to-air format, fired at about 40,000 feet supersonic, is going to be just over 200 miles. So today these will have a maximum firing range of about 210 sat-shoot miles, about 180 nautical miles. Our friend Dark has done the aerodynamics for them, and we've had to do some interesting tinkering. There are no air-to-air missiles in core DCS that can achieve this, so we have to basically make it from scratch. I told him in my brief I wanted a missile with a maximum speed of Mach 4, as apparently is true to real life, but with the ability to do the large ranges, so they have to have quite a strange flight profile to do this. They're going to have to go very high, well over 100,000 feet. The J-15s are going to be in their typical loadout of 6 PL-15s, range about 120 miles, and PL-10s max range about 20 miles. An IR guided missile, as you're probably used to by now. And it's as simple as that, viewers. At this point I would usually like to make predictions. I've tried this 1v1 because I had to check the missiles work, but I have not tried it squadron v squadron yet, because I want to be surprised as you, otherwise it's very boring for me and the commentating will be boring. What I can tell you is that the missiles will be fired at their maximum ranges today, so the SM-6 will be fired at 210 miles because the target they are firing on is optimal altitude and speed, and they're being fired from a platform at optimal altitude and speed. All missiles today will be guided by the data link of their AWACS, as it will be outrange of all AESA radars today. So there's no doubt the US are going to get the first shot. So it all depends on how well those SM-6s, how smart they're going to be, and of course what their probability of kill is. If they get a good probability of kill, I don't see any way that the Americans could lose, which changes slightly from if they just had their otherwise best weapon, which would be the AIM-120D3. And we've run that before. A squadron of Super Hornet, so the same aircraft versus J-15B from China. In this case, the Super Hornet just had the AIM-120D3 with a range of about 110 miles. If you remember from that battle, it was more or less even, but the J-15 had the edge in the end because their missiles are slightly longer range and just performed ever so slightly better. And unpause. So they're starting at 250 miles. Let's first look at the Chinese. J-15 Bravo. Woof. And the Americans. The more I look at that loadout, viewers, the more I think I probably should have put 2 rather than 4. That looks a little unrealistic having that big a missile on it. But never mind, let's see what happens anyway. Everyone set equal, all travelling supersonic at what will become their max speed with these loadouts at their optimal firing altitude of 36,000 feet. First missiles out. Oh wow, look at that. Look at the size of the thing. 4 missiles out. Right, here we go. It's going to have a 2-stage motor on it. First you'll see, the second you won't see. It's going to get it up to Mark 4. Wow, look at them all coming out. Now, how many are they going to fire? 20 out. That's more than they've got targets. That's interesting. It appears almost something may have changed in core game. Right, it just peaked 2,900 knots, which is about Mark 4.1. It's now decreasing its speed, but still increasing its altitude up to 90,000 feet. Wow, 46 out, 49 out, 52 out. At a cost of $250 million. 61 out. They're just firing them all. Now that's interesting. I was not expecting that. Usually what happens is they will only fire the amount of missiles that they need to fire. So it appears that something may have changed. We'll see. Right, just under Mark 4 now, 110,000 feet, still increasing altitude. Look back. I mean, it's such an impressive missile. Now, this is our best guess of how it could be used. Now, here's an interesting thing. If I pause, because we've had to make it go so high, because the only way of making something that can go Mark 4 with a non-sustaining engine is to get it really high, to fire it in a big parabola, like if you're throwing a stone really far. If it were to stay down lower, it simply couldn't do it because it doesn't have enough energy to push through the atmosphere. Up here, there's almost no atmosphere, so it can just glide in. But the problem we found at this point is that to achieve the massive ranges that we want to achieve, we need to make it do something smart. And so what it does at this point is, on purpose, it dips its tail down and increases its angle of attack massively and does what I call surfing. So look at its tail go down. It's now going to surf, skipping along the edge of the atmosphere. Oh, look at that. There's another one there. And it will go up to quite a high angle of attack. It loses speed slowly, but not much, because there's almost no air up here. And this is how it's going to get its range. It's going to surf along at this kind of, whatever that is, 20 degrees angle of attack. When it starts coming into the thick air, because of course it has to lose altitude to maintain its speed roughly, then it's going to dip its nose back down and dive down. Let's see. Wow, 64. They've just 16 times. Yeah, they've just fired all of their missiles. Now, this is new because previously, when we've done battles like this, what usually happens is only the amount of missiles that would need to be fired would be fired. So there may be some changes that have happened in core game here. We'll just have to see. Changes always happen in the background. We're never aware of them. We don't find out about them until we start slinging missiles at each other. We're just getting below. Okay, we're coming back into the atmosphere now. We're getting below 100,000 feet. Our speed is about Mark 3.5 or 3.5 times the speed of sound. Total cost, 278 million worth of SM6. I suspect that's a bit overkill, to be honest. They probably didn't need to launch all of those. Now, here's another point. If I pause here, traditionally what would happen is problems with target deconfliction, as I call it. What would tend to happen is that missiles would all be fired at the same target. So all of these guys would launch their missiles and they would tend to fire them at, well, what they consider the biggest threat, which is just like that guy there, the closest guy. I think there have been changes in game to rectify that, and so it's going to be interesting to see how these perform now. Let's carry on watching them get through the atmosphere. We're on my favourite map here, the Kola map, with their lovely mountains. Now look, can you see what I mean? Now it's getting to the point where it needs to start dipping its nose back down and actually becoming aerodynamic, and the Chinese have started firing, so they've got to within 120 nautical miles, I think, somewhere. Someone's fired. They are firing. They're definitely firing. So if my guys fired at 210 miles, we've now closed 90 miles. We're now at 120 miles, and the Chinese are now firing. They're definitely, yes, there they are. You can see missiles coming out now. This is a Mark IV missile. I guess you'd call it a miniature version of the SM-6 in a way. And it does the same speed, Mark IV, and it does the same kind of skipping off the atmosphere type trick, but it doesn't go as high. It'll go to about 80,000 feet. Twin pulse solid jet. Maximum range 120 miles, but you have to take all mileage. When it comes to missiles, you have to take all mileages with a real pinch of salt, because you just have to trust me, the physics is very strange. Put it lightly, and here come the SM-6s. Look at them diving down now, 50,000 feet, Mark III now. Now, can they sustain enough speed to get the probability of kill that we want? It looks like they will. Wow, look at those missiles going up into the atmosphere. Wow, only $12 million worth. That's how cheap those PL-15s are compared to the SM-6s, which are incredibly and notoriously expensive. And here we go. Let's see if it's worth the money. More PL-15s coming out. And pause, because we're doing science at the end of the day. We've got an impact velocity there of 1,900 knots, which is Mark 2 point something. Okay, so they've maintained all that energy, dived out of the atmosphere, and smashed. Now, it's going to be very hard to dodge at these speeds. Now, that is much faster than we would see an AMRAAM. An AMRAAM fired at its maximum range is going to hit more like Mark 1.5 at best. And I guess we're seeing the benefit of such a big, fast missile going so high now. And the PKs are looking excellent. 14. Oh, wow. They've just wiped them all out. We have room to spare. Pause. Let's digest that. Quick sip of tea. I mean, the PK was absolutely astonishing there, viewers. And interestingly, these missiles are not... There's nothing really cheaty about them. They are essentially the same code as that PL-15 there. All we've changed is that they have the ability to go much higher and have that fancy surfing technique. Otherwise, there's not really much difference. So how they managed to get such a brilliant PK, I don't know. And why they fired so many, I don't know. And here's a really interesting thing as well. Note how the deconfliction was beautiful. There was a missile on every single target, hitting time on target. And I think that's new to DCS, so that's interesting. Usually what you'd see is stupid firing, where they'll all be fired for one flight. This time they deconflicted perfectly, so I look forward to seeing how that's going to go. Anyway, all China managed to get off, I guess as you would expect, is a handful here, because those are the only guys that managed to get in range to fire. Meanwhile, at this point, I've asked the Hornets to go defensive, so they're going to try and dodge these PL-15s now. Also, it looks like it doesn't matter whether I put 2 or 4 of these SM-6s on, because if I got 2, they probably still would have killed all of the J-15s. PL-15s, ooh, going really high. Right, so what's happened now is because all the Hornets have turned away, the PL-15s have had to change what they do to try and make the distance that they predict they have to do. So they've had to go up really high all of a sudden, and look, they've burnt their speed down. They're sub Mark II now, or just under Mark II, and they're trying to float because they know that to make the impact, they've got to kind of get ahead of these Hornets, which are going probably Buster. Are they? Yes, they are. Maximum speed away. Probably not. We'll see. The missiles are still going faster than the jets, so we'll just be patient and wait. Can we see any of them? Negative. I suspect they've probably given up at this point. If they get to the point, yeah, they're falling out the sky now. You need to maintain a certain speed to be able to fly up here. Yeah, they're stalling, and they're probably given up. No, they're still chasing targets. Well, let's keep going. They're still going faster than the Hornets. The Hornets can't really go that fast, not with stores on. You see how it's dropping now? It's starting to lose its energy. It's having to really drop to maintain that speed. And look at the Hornets. The Hornets are now going nearly as fast as the missiles. No, look, they've given up. You can see at this point, they realise I can't catch that aeroplane up, so I'm just going to give up and or it's run out of battery or whatever. Either way, it's gone. Right, so, what a brilliant use case that was. The PK was absolutely unbelievable. Why? I don't really know. They just performed really well at that altitude, diving down, maintaining their speed, hitting the target at just over Mark II, I think, which made it almost undodgeable. The Chinese only managed to fire. So what would happen if it was AMRAAMs versus PL-15s is there would be more PL-15s, much more PL-15s in the air than AMRAAMs. And the China would use that, and they would eventually wear the Super Hornets down and win, like we've done in the previous battle. This time it was the other way around, but to the extreme, because the Americans could fire 90 miles before the PL-15s could fire, which means we've got 64 missiles out and didn't even need to bother firing any AMRAAMs, and the China only managed to get within range to 515, which were outrun because the Hornets could fire so early, and remember, they don't need to guide their missiles in with their own radar, they leave that to AWACS or an F-35 or an F-22 or whatever. And the missile will find its own way there, and they can run away, and they've just run these missiles out of leg. So, I mean, it's an unbelievable game changer. And it comes at a high cost, because firing those missiles costs over $250 million. So I don't know if they'd ever be allowed to do it. But theoretically, what a weapon if you can make that happen. I guess one caveat to that is it would only work against 4th gen fighters. What we found is that you can have the best weapon, best missile in the world. It has no advantage against a stealth fighter. If you went against an F-35 or something, you can use, a Sidewinder is just as effective as a PL-15 at that point, because you can only fire at about 20 miles anyway. So, but against 4th gen jets, and again, as I saw before, using this in the sniper role at its maximum, we got it to loft 100, 230 miles here for this shot. It's just an absolute beast. Let me know what you think. I thought that was thoroughly impressive, and we'll see whether they do get adapted full time for Super Hornet. I hope you enjoyed that, and bye-bye.